I am glad you found your way in here, for I am sure there is much that will interest you.
Passing an argument means providing values to a function or procedure when it is called. Arguments allow us to pass data to a function, enabling that function to perform specific tasks with the data. We have passed arguments in previous videos, but I would like to explore the topic in greater detail here. We've made two new verbs here to strike an object. They're called jab and roundhouse. Well, what is it that we're going to be striking? We're going to be striking this new object here called punching bag. Punching bag has two new variables, can be damaged and hit points. Keep these in mind. Each of these verbs is set to a new category called striking. They check for any object, O, in the next tile based on the direction the user is facing. It then checks if that object, O, can be damaged, and if it can, then this next block of code will run. We set the variable damage equal to the result of this equation on line 11. We create a new object here called notify text, and notify text is just overhead text that appears over the player's head. We make sure that it appears at the player's location here on line 13. And then we have that text call its send procedure and display the following string. I'll show you what that looks like. But we're not making good use of passing arguments with these two verbs. Let's look at a different way that we can handle jab and roundhouse. I have rewritten both of these verbs. The first difference that you'll notice here is that we're now using cooldowns for both of these skills. Cooldowns were covered in a previous video, but some of you have been asking about how to handle them. The first thing we do in each one of these verbs is check to see if the world time is a lower value than striking cooldown. And striking cooldown is just a new mob variable that we've added. If this is true, we're going to return and we will not proceed. If we do proceed, these two statements are the same as in the previous two verbs. We're looking for the object O in the direction the user is facing and checking to see if that object can be damaged. If true, then the next lines of code will execute. When they do, the very first thing that we do is set our striking cooldown equal to the world time plus 20. That's effectively a 2-second cooldown on jab. Next we define some variables called mod strength, mod speed, static damage, and color. But these variables don't do anything yet. Finally, when we jab, we're going to call the damage proc and pass in our variables as arguments. Each of these arguments is separated by a comma, and they are mod strength, mod speed, static damage, O, punching, and color. Let's copy and paste this line and take a look at our damage proc. Our damage proc here on line 14 takes a total of 6 different arguments. It isn't necessary to give it all 6 arguments, but in this instance we have. The first line inside our damage proc defines the variable amount as equal to the sum of mod strength, mod speed, and bonus. Mod strength and mod speed have been passed as the first and second argument, respectively. We can see what their values were here. But what is bonus? Bonus is the third argument. We passed static damage as our third argument. So what's going on? Regardless of your naming convention, each passed argument will correspond to the argument within this procedure in the proper order. Therefore, this bonus argument in our procedure will use the value of our third passed argument called static damage. Static damage, as you can see here, was equal to 5. Therefore, bonus is equal to 5. The fourth argument is called object target. We want our damage proc to know that this argument will always be an object, which will be referred to by the word target. As with our previous argument, our passed argument O is now called target, but they are both referencing the same object. It may be easier for you to keep argument names the same, or you could add a prefix such as passed to indicate that you are using a passed value. But I wanted to illustrate that names do not matter, as long as the arguments are passed in the order corresponding with those in your procedure. Next, we have an argument called type, which by default is equal to the string physical. But as you can see, we're passing the string punching. Therefore, this default value of physical is going to be overridden by the string punching. Type is equal to punching. And last, we do that very same thing for the argument called body. Body's default value is the color black, but we are passing in the color red. Therefore, body is equal to the color red. The reason we've assigned default values to both type and body is just in case we forget to pass an argument through. If we ever call the damage procedure and do not provide a type or a body, then it's going to default to physical damage and the color of the text is going to be black, and that's not an issue. Next, still inside of our damage procedure, we're creating the overhead text again. This is because we've changed our jab and roundhouse verbs to no longer create this text on their own. We want the text only to be created when damage is dealt. And now, this text is also receiving 3 arguments when it's created here with new. These 3 arguments are for location, step X, and step Y. These are coordinates for the source, which is us, the player mob. Next, on line 17, that text is going to call its send procedure, and it'll receive 2 more passed arguments. These 2 arguments are a string of text and an assigned value to color body called body. Wait, did you see what we did there? When we use the jab verb, we're passing in the color red to the damage proc. Then that same color, now called body, is being passed to the overhead text through the send procedure. We just passed this color argument twice, like a game of hot potato. So let's go look at that overhead text. In Dreammaker, this is called map text, and we will not be covering it in detail in this video, but I would like to show you where it is receiving its arguments. First, we passed in our source location when creating new text. Those are received here, and we're calling them tile, X, and Y. By uncommenting these 3 lines of text, we've just enabled this object to receive these arguments about its location when a new instance of the object is created. Here on line 15, you can see that this object's send proc actually takes 3 arguments, not 2. Those 3 arguments are string, color outline, and color body. As previously mentioned, you don't need to pass in the same number of arguments that a proc takes. But if you pass in arguments out of order, you must specify what they are. The first argument in the send procedure is a string, and so it's okay that our string is here in the front. But the second argument in that send procedure is color outline. We are not passing in a color outline, and for this reason, we cannot just pass the value of body. We must specify that it's the color body that is going to be body. Take a moment to look at the rest of this code and try to guess what's going to happen next when we log into the game. If you guessed that we were going to lift the barbell, you'd be right. But that's only because we want to increase our strength before we hit this bag. It looks like we hit our bag a little too hard. Passing arguments is one of the most important concepts that you'll need to understand when creating the game of your dreams. We understand that some of this video may be confusing, and for that reason we encourage you to join our Discord community. If you find our videos helpful, go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, and come into Discord, and we'll help you figure out everything you're struggling with. As Calvin Coolidge is quoted to have said, persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. We'll see you on the next one.